Hey there, I have a special announcement. From May 22nd through May 28th, I'm rerunning my most popular episodes of your weekly dose of higher consciousness, all of which are what I call foundational basics. And I understand that we need to hear what I speak about more than a few times until it really starts to sink in. And be forewarned, these are from almost 5 years ago when I first began. So I may sound a bit different than I do now. I know I feel a lot different than I did back then. So I hope you enjoy these. And then next week, you're going to find out all about something new I'm cooking up here in Colorado, just outside of Aspen. How's that for a little name dropping? In the meantime, this is your last chance to enroll in Eckhart Tolle's all-new 4-month-long immersive program for his very popular online course, The Spiritual Guide to Conscious Manifestation, where you're going to discover your true creative powers and fulfill your highest purpose. It begins with a 4-day online retreat, May 30th through June 2nd, and you can still access his free mini video series or enroll in his program at the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com/Eckhart Tolle, all one word, or click on the links below in the podcast. Now on for today's episode. Well, hey there. It's that time again when I recommend a high vibe book, meaning a book that has been calibrated as to its level of consciousness, that for personal development and spiritual growth and any type of professional learning, it needs to calibrate above 200 on the scale of human consciousness, which is where we want to be hanging out if our intention is to learn something new that holds truth, or improve ourselves in some way with content that calibrates at a level that holds truth as opposed to not holding any truth. And don't misunderstand, there's plenty of books out there that are low vibe, but they're intended to be, thrillers, murder mysteries, fun and entertaining. This is what I'm talking about today is different. If you want to put your faith in somebody else, you want to make sure that book calibrates above 200 so you're being sucked down the rabbit hole of negativity and destructive energy fields. You don't want to go there. You want to stay in the high energy, constructive, upward lifting energy fields. Now, today's book recommendation, I haven't read it. I just, I can't keep up with reading all these books I want to recommend to you. But I subscribe to a website called consciousnesscalibrations.com, and the gentleman there calibrates books that we as subscribers can request if it serves, the highest good and a greater audience. And I also go check out Amazon to see what kind of ratings and reviews they have as well to make sure everything's lined up. So today's book recommendation is called Be Your Future Self Now, The Science of Intentional Transformation. And here's just a little snippet about the book. This isn't a book about becoming, it's about being. And noted psychologist Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who is the author, shows how to imagine the person you want to be, then be that person now. And when you do this, your imagined future self directs your behavior rather than your past. And we're going to talk about this more, and it's super interesting when I've kind of come into my awareness. I'm using this technique that was first introduced to me by Dr. David R. Hawkins. So, and apparently Dr. Benjamin Hardy, the author, also references the teachings of Dr. Hawkins and just choosing an attractor field to be, and then allow the magnetism of that field to direct your behavior and your way of being and how you interact with the world, things like that. But before I get into today's book and topic, my name is Liz Garcia. I am your happy host at highvibetriberadio.com on the podcast and highvibetribetv.com on our YouTube channel. I'm also the founder and editor-in-chief of themindbodyspiritnetwork.com, which brings you this podcast. My intention with these upward-pulling and influential books, which have been calibrated above 200 on the scale of human consciousness, or also a similar scale as the map of spiritual progress, is to introduce you to luminary healers, visionary teachers, best-selling authors, celebrated agents of change, and content that can help you shift on some level, whether it's the emotional, mental, physical, or spiritual. And today is no exception. And as Albert Einstein has been famously quoted, you can't solve a problem from the level of consciousness that created it. So let's get started. So the book, called Be Your Future Self Now, The Science of Intentional Transformation, according to ConsciousnessCalibrations.com, calibrates at 255 or 10 to the 255th power on the scale of human consciousness and the map of spiritual progress. It has, at the time of this recording, combined over 1,400 4.5-star ratings on Amazon and Goodreads. So there's about 700 on each one of those websites. So that's pretty significant rating and a pretty good number of ratings considering the category that it's in. Now remember, anything above 200 is positively oriented, upward pulling, constructive, and holds a certain level of truth and power. Also remember that just because something is of higher consciousness does not make it better. It's just a different energy field. And this particular book, as an example, is in an energy field of 255, and it doesn't require any more energy. Right? It's a sufficient, this topic is the energy of what it is. So, and it's likely perfect for tons of people because most people, well, anyway, 80% of the world calibrates below 200. So the energy field of the 200s is a great starter kit for many people for learning something new. And this is kind of what I've discovered in my research and my studying of all of this, that the 200s is a field for introductory stuff or things to get you started, foundational basics to higher consciousness. And as an example, books above 500 on the scale definitely are not for everybody. And in fact, 80% or more of the planet won't necessarily even understand the power and truth of books at these levels, especially when you get into the 600s. So, books in the 500s and 600s and above are for advanced spiritual students, just so you know, as an example. And people that, in their heart of hearts, are seeking the truth of God and higher consciousness. So here is what today's episode is going to look like. I want to discuss different levels of consciousness and consciousness calibrations that are similar to the energy of this book. Just because it's super interesting and puts many things into context for you in regards to these, what I call impersonal attractor fields and measurements of energy. Let's just cut it down to what it is. There's no judgment, right? There's no opinion here. These are just the facts. So we're talking about impersonal attractor fields of energy or measurements of energy. And I want to briefly review the energy of intention because it's in the title. So, Be Your Future Self Now, The Science of Intentional Transformation. And I've done an entire episode about intention, so I'm just going to touch on it lightly. And I also did an entire higher consciousness quiz episode on the consciousness of living in the past, living in the present, and living in the future. And that this is related to what he's talking about today, which we're going to just mention that, the calibrations of that, as it pertains to this book and this episode today. Because again, this book isn't a book about becoming, it's about being, which is a present tense thing, and shows you how to imagine the person you want to be, then be that person now. So that's present moment living, and I know this can be a little confusing, but I think I've unraveled how to go about that based on things I've learned from Dr. Hawkins and what I'm applying in my own life right now. And when you do this, your imagined future directs your behavior rather than your past. So Dr. Hawkins, again, has discussed this on many occasions. And again, the author, Benjamin Hardy, apparently mentions Dr. David R. Hawkins in his book and videos, which is what I do here. And in fact, the teachings of Dr. David R. Hawkins are the foundations for this podcast, Your Weekly Dose of Higher Consciousness. This is where it all began for me. Then I will read you the description of the book and add some insights to what the description of the book is saying as well. So let's start with calibrations or energy fields that are the same calibration as the book at 255. And according to Dr. Hawkins' book, Truth versus Falsehood, this is the energy field of being genuine. And the level of consciousness known as neutral on the map of spiritual progress and the scale of human consciousness is 250, which is the energies of cooperation, fairness, and inclusiveness. So this is the kind of the region of energy that we're talking about. It can't be genuine. I mean, hello. Genuine is who doesn't, you want to work with people and interact with people that are genuine and neutral for that matter. And neutral is always my go-to energy field when you're just understanding how to raise your level of consciousness and learning how to let go. So I'll share the link to that resource, that episode on neutral, in the show notes, like right at the top. I'll share the links. You can just go right to it or wherever. It'll be in the show notes. And it's also my vision for the world is to raise our level of consciousness so that the consciousness of the world is at 250, which is a huge leap in consciousness for us right now, because the world has dropped from 207 on the map to around 190 in the past 2 years, which kind of stinks, but it is what it is. So we collectively need to be the change we want to see in the world. And when you raise your level of consciousness above 200, you have a lot of power to ripple out high vibes in the world. I'm just saying, when you start to understand this, you have the power within you to be the rippler without having to force or change anybody else. They're just going to be affected by your energy field. People, it's a silent kind of transmission, sort of. So, what other things calibrate at 255? And all of these calibrations come from consciousnesscalibrations.com, which I have spoken to the founder of that, and he's happy to let me share these with you. Okay, and they're all different types of topics, but the energy is the same. So the first thing is an abundance mindset. And this is a law of attraction buzzword thing, but there is a level of truth to it at 255. The art of diplomacy in general, which is there is some finesse and mastery in being diplomatic. And diplomacy is the art of dealing with people in a sensitive and effective way. Same energy as the book. A catnap has the same energy as diplomacy and an abundance mindset. I mean, it's kind of interesting that they're such different topics, but they require the same energy. It's like, plugging it into the wall. This is all the energy you need to have an abundance mindset, to be diplomatic, to take a cat nap. This saying is good. The statement, everything is going to be okay, in the immediate sense. So when you say everything's going to be okay, it calibrates at 255, there's a neutralizing effect and energy that's helpful to the situation. And you've probably experienced that when someone says it to you, everything's going to be okay, that you can feel the energy of relief. Like, okay, there's that the power of that offsets any type of disruptive energies. And this is in the immediate sense, not necessarily in the ultimate sense. This is just in the immediate, whatever's going on in the moment. Okay, I love this next one. The sitcom Wings, which is one of my favorites, is calibrates at 255. It's super fun. I love it more because it's set in Nantucket, where I used to own a restaurant for many years back in the 80s and 90s. So I love any type of content related to Nantucket, especially Ellen Hildebrand's books. They're all written about on the topic of Nantucket. I've read them all. So anyway, Wings is super fun. And finally, something that's new to me, which is related to books, I think is super interesting, is an app called the Blink List, which is a service that provides summaries of over 5,000 best-selling nonfiction books. And they're like 15-minute reads, and they're otherwise known as blinks, or book in a blink. So that's super cool. They're not doing, they're just focused on best-selling books, not necessarily books that have been calibrated as to their consciousness, because there's tons of best-selling books that are just entertaining and fun, as I said before. And there's no judgment or opinion in regards to books like that. It's what you're attracted to. And I have an 84-year-old friend who loves chop 'em up murder mysteries, and she's like salt of the earth, sweetie pie. You can't believe that this is what she loves to read. Okay. So next, I want to talk about the power of intention. And remember, the book is called Be Your Future Self Now, The Science of Intentional Transformation. Now, intention calibrates at 310, or 10 to the 310th power, which is a quantum leap in power above the energy of the book of 255, which is not, it doesn't make it better, it's just a different energy. So it calibrates at 310 on the map of spiritual consciousness and the scale of human consciousness, which is a power play in consciousness, let me tell you. It's the energies of balance, decisiveness, success, optimism, sane. And I did an entire episode on this level, as well as an entire episode on a video I share with Oprah Winfrey and Gary Zukov that speak about the power of setting intentions. And again, I'll provide links to these episodes in the notes below, because these are great next steps you can take if you find this topic of Be Your Future Self Now, the book. These other two episodes are related, so you're really kind of juicing up your awareness with the understanding of the power in these different attractor fields. So now, again, this isn't a book about becoming, it's a book about being. And it shows you how to imagine the person you want to be, then be that person now. And when you do this, your imagined future directs your behavior rather than your past. So I want to mention, I did an entire quiz, higher consciousness quiz, about living in the past, living in the present moment, and living in the future. And I'm going to share the results of that. When you live in the past, the energy of it is 95, which is super low. It's a rabbit hole of negativity and destructiveness. So living in the past is not fruitful whatsoever. Like, let it go. I like to say, do the math. Living in the present moment calibrates at 200. So present moment living is a much more powerful state than living in the past at all. And you can kind of maybe reflect on the past is a good idea. And you can have some regrets, but you can't stay there because it doesn't exist anymore, for one thing. You got to let it go and be more present is mathematically the better way to go. Far superior power in present moment living than living in the past. So 95 is 10 to the 95th power. Living in the present moment is 10 to the 200th power, and it's positively oriented, whereas the other one is negatively oriented. So living in the past is a powerfully destructive way to go, as opposed to living in the present moment. Living in the future isn't much better at 110. It's still a destructive thing to be living in the future because you're not present. You're out there, right? Projecting something that doesn't exist yet. You've got to kind of live in the moment. And let me tell you, I've been living in the future and it has not been helpful for me. The way I've been unconsciously going about trying to make changes in my life. Don't recommend it, and I'm telling you again, do the math. Living in the past is 95, living in the future 110. Nothing's good below 200. It's all destructive, downward pulling, a toilet bowl of energy. Whereas living in the present moment has true power. Right? It's constructive, positively oriented. Again, do the math. Now, I have another resource for you that was interesting. I don't know if maybe you've heard of Neville Goddard. He is, let me just tell you what Wikipedia said. He was a Barbadian New Thought author and mystic who was born in 1905. He wrote on the Bible, esotericism, and is considered to be one of the pioneers of the law of assumption. Now, this video lecture, a lecture that was put onto YouTube video because we didn't have YouTube and video stuff back in the day when he was doing these things, called How to Manifest Anything Under the Power of Imagination, which is what the book is talking about. Imagine the person you want to be. So, How to Manifest Anything Using the Power of Imagination by Neville Goddard. It's a Neville Goddard lecture calibrated at 400 on the scale of human consciousness. This is huge. This is higher level truth, right? This is the energy of the mind, science in the mind. So there's higher level truth being spoken here. So this is a good resource for you to look into the power of imagination, which the book is talking about. And so I found that calibration on consciousnesscalibrations.com. But if you go to YouTube and Google How to Manifest Anything Using the Power of Imagination by Neville Goddard, you're going to find a bunch of results, and you can listen to that there. It's only like a 10-minute lecture. Another good point to know is that according to consciousness research, he was a spiritual teacher of higher consciousness. So, what I've spoken of so far is more than enough to assure you that your imagination is powerful and effective when what you hold in mind is positively oriented, present moment living, optimistic, intentional, and decisive. This is the foundational building blocks for higher consciousness on this particular topic. So now I want to read to you the description of the book that you can find on Amazon and Goodreads.com. That's the same description. So here we go. Who is your future self? That question may seem trite, but it's literally the answer to all of your life's questions. It's the answer to what are you going to do today? It's the answer to how motivated are you and how you feel about yourself. It's the answer to whether you'll distract yourself on social media for hours, whether you'll eat junk food, and what time you get up in the morning. Your imagined future self is the driver of your current reality. It is up to you to develop the ability to imagine better and more expansive visions of your future self. Your current view of your future self could be very limited, especially with the description the questions I just posed. Some of them are limiting, right? Are you going to distract yourself on social media for hours? Are you going to eat junk food? At what time are you going to get up? Are you going to what are you going to do? So this is whatever you're doing in the present moment is kind of directing that future self. So you got to take a look at, what am I doing today? What can I do differently today to set the compass differently? Okay, like you're setting a different compass when you kind of consciously consider where do I want to go, who do I want to be, and take a look at, is that what my day looks like? Is what I'm doing today going to bring me there or not? So again, your current view of your future self could be very limited. But if you seek learning, growth, and new experiences, you'll be able to imagine a different and better future self than you currently can. It's not only useful to see your future self as a different person from who you are today, but it's also completely accurate. Your future self will not be the same person you are today. You will see the world differently. You'll have had experiences, challenges, and growth you currently don't have. You'll have different goals and priorities. You'll have different habits. You'll also be in a world with different cultural values, different technologies, and different challenges. So that's the description of the book. And I just want to put in my little 2 cents here, because in the last few months, I've been using guidance and higher consciousness insights that I get from consciousnesscalibrations.com and from Dr. Hawkins' lectures that you can find on YouTube, I highly recommend his lectures. He's a total cutie pie, friggin' brilliant, genius level, funny as can be. So I have noticed that I have chosen attractor fields of energy that I know are high vibe. As an example, I choose happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. They're essentially in the same ballpark, in the high 300s, which is significant in this world, considering 80% or more of the world calibrates below 200. It's a huge leap in consciousness to be operating in the high 300s, let me tell you. Though you may be operating in the high 300s on many topics, many of us still are brought down in our consciousness by views of ourself, as an example, views of our past, views of our present moment. All of these things bring your level of consciousness down, but it's a good idea to recognize where you are operating, on a high level in some other areas of your life. So I have noticed that I recently chose to be of higher energy, and I have chosen to be of higher esteem, and I have chosen higher experiences. And in doing this, you're setting the compass. A compass is magnetic, right? If you want to head north, you got to follow the compass, because it's going to tell you where north is. And when you choose higher energy, or you choose to be happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, that compass is going to change, right? It's going to point you in the direction of that, and it's a magnetic field. That compass is attuned to the magnetic field of wherever you're setting it. So Get your head out of the way, stop thinking about it, and just choose one and allow that choice to guide you. That's my advice. I'm experiencing it to great significance right now, which I'll do a whole other episode about it. Today was about introducing you to this notion and a book that can help you with the understanding of it at 255. So, if you like what's going on today, share it in social media, share it with your family, friends, and business associates, and rate us wherever you downloaded this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, my name is Liz Garcia. I'm your host of your weekly dose of higher consciousness. And I'm pretty sure next week is your weekly dose of higher consciousness quiz, which I love doing quizzes. They're fun. I'll see you then. Hey there, Lovey Lou. If you are new to your weekly dose of higher consciousness podcast or an avid listener, I have something just for you. I created a landing page with all of my playlists in one place. So for new listeners, I created a playlist called Foundational Basics. This is where you will want to begin to come up to speed on your understanding of the map of consciousness, a proven energy scale for realizing your ultimate potential by Dr. David R. Hawkins, and with where we are now. For avid listeners, I've created playlists for all of my popular topics like 1001 Ways to Be of Higher Consciousness, 1001 Ways to Let Go of. Those great higher consciousness quizzes that helps you test your intuition and develop discernment skills, tools for transformation, high vibe book recommendations, and my general main topics. You can find all of these playlists on the website at themindbodyspiritnetwork.com/podcast. Or you can find it in a link below in the show notes. Now back to today's episode.